Dzień dobry. Czy wszyscy mnie widzą? Bych chciał, że zaczęli wiercić mi 2 minuty temu, dokładnie, w pięknym niebieskim pokoju. Ale myślę, że możemy zaczynać. Ciasno już czasem, więc zaczynajmy. I'm Michał. I'm the CTO at Passion, and I'm very excited to be here and talk to all of you today. This presentation is going to be in English because I wrote it that way. If you want to later talk about it in Polish, hit me up on my Twitter at Michał Warda, or find me at our booth in the job section after the presentation. So before we start, if you're interested in building cool applications, let's say you would like to build a huge app that uses machine learning and is responsible for selling millions of products worth tens of millions of dollars every month. Or if you would like to create an app that communicates with IoT and works on cloud functions like Polaroid. Or you would like to work on an innovative news service that serves tens of thousands of users each day and uses bleeding edge technology. And many, many more, including fresh green fields, new tech, DDD, databases, I don't know, React Native, you name it, we probably have it. If you're a designer, developer, front-end, back-end, PM, marketing, also it's every role is welcome. Come to our booth and get to know us. We also have a contest where you can win the Polaroid printer that we've helped program. And check our website at lpassion.com if you have any more questions, or hit me up as I previously said. And if you're interested in music or want to create something cool, or you just want to have some fun, join us at the hackathon that we've just announced that we're organizing together with one of our partners, Nuance, that will be held on the 19th and 20th of November. And you can read more about it at the link that's on the screen. But we have no more time to talk. We've got a lot of work to do. So what you can see on your screen, sudden change. What you can see on the screen are two windows. The one on the left is Google Chrome with two phone interfaces. And the second one is a code editor. The first one on the left, the design on the left is a phone that is just a screenshot that we received from our client. And the right one is the app that we will be working on together today. So what's our job here? What do we have to do? Our job is to make the one on the right look and feel like the one on the left. Pretty simple. Our app that we'll be working on is written in React using Next.js, Tailwind, and TypeScript. If you're unfamiliar with any of those technologies, then don't worry. I'll try to explain everything that is happening as we will go through our task. And if you'll have any questions, then leave them in the comments, and I'll answer them as soon as we finish this. We have prepared some time for the Q&A at the end. So let's go back to our app. What does our app do? It's a crypto wallet, so very hip right now, that shows on how much are your crypto worth together, and what are the ones that you should think about buying or selling next. At the top, we have the header with the name and our current wallet state. We have the tickers of the most interesting instruments, and the watch list containing the instruments below it. For each of those instruments, we have an avatar, a name, symbol, and its current price and the price change. So our client is happy with our progress that I've made on this application, but I need your help right now because I didn't finish it yet. So let's do it together. Let's implement the app together further. And the first thing we're gonna do is implement the instruments to, rather than using this hard-coded stuff, use something that we get from backend. And what do we get from backend? We get simple data. we get from our backend, we receive a list of instruments. For each of those instruments, we get a name that is a string, symbol that is a string, a price that is a number, and a price change that is a number, and the avatar that is a string. I've already managed to pass it all to the component itself in the code, so we get this instrument here, and our job at start will be very easy to just have it working, rather than from raw data, hard-coded data, have it working from those instruments. So I'll just use it. So instead of having the hard-coded source for the logo that we had, we'll use the avatar from the instrument that we've just looked at. Instead of having the name hard-coded, we'll have the instrument name. Similarly, we'll have the instrument symbol and the instrument price. And at the end, the instrument price change. Before you ask, we have props instrument everywhere. I'll destructure this object so that it uses only the props instrument at the top, and below it will have the name, symbol, price, and price change. But what we've lost during this implementation is the formatting. So we no longer have the value formatted. Previously, it was a hard-coded string. So we need to format it. And how do we format it? I've already written a function that is responsible for formatting. So this one will take a value that is a number. Fortunately, we have a number, and will return a number formatted value using the new INTL API. Check it out. I suggest checking it out. So I'll use my function that I've created previously. And I'll wrap my price with this function. So as you can see, the formatting works, and now we have the dollars here, and the values are correctly formatted. So now I'll do the same thing for the price change. I've also created one more that will have the format price change in percents, and the percents are shown correctly here. Works beautifully. But there's one problem. On our design, the negative values are displayed as red, but on our design, everything is displayed as green. So rather than having it hard-coded here, I'll use something called class names that whenever the price change is greater than 0, I'll add a class for the text that is green. And whenever whenever the price change is lower than 0, I'll have the red text. And thank God, it works perfectly. We can say that we've implemented the instruments correctly. So now let's do the exact same thing for the tickers. So this part, going from down to top, but that's how that's how we do it here. So in the ticker, we have, again, the same situation where we get from our backend an object that is a ticker. It contains only a symbol and a price change. This price change is a number, and the symbol is a string. And our job here is, again, let's go to the ticker. We already have it here, and let's just use it. So here we'll display the symbol. Perfect. And here we'll display the price change. And again, we need to format it in percents because we have to have it working here in percents. And again, we're missing the colors. So I'll do the exact same thing. And here show the green text whenever the prop sticker price change is greater than 0, and the red text whenever the props ticker price change is less than 0. Simple enough. Working perfectly, no problems. Let's move forward. Still, I know you probably have some suggestions about what to do next with it, but let's continue first and attach the account to the data. In account, also we receive the name, which is a string value, value change avatar, everything as previously in previous components. So we'll attach the name. Just like we did previously, we'll format value in dollars of the props account value, and we'll format price change in percents of the props, props account price change, the value change here. We didn't import, and we're missing the colors. So we'll get the colors working. I already have those implemented, so I'll just copy it. I'll destructure the occurrences, and voila. Currently, our value is positive, so you cannot really see the negative one, but I'll just for testing purposes, I'll change it and see we have also the negative values working. Beautiful. So we're at this point where all of our application is working correctly. It's as it is on the design, but now it's time for code review. And everyone knows that on code reviews, people don't like code repetition. So let's try to remove the code repetition. And how do we do that? We'll do that by extracting the common parts. So in our header, in our instrument, and in our ticker, in all of those three places, we have the same span. So let's extract this. And let's call it value change. And our value change, thank God, receives the components that it needs. And our value change right now still works, displays correctly. So I'll move it because I want to use it in other places. I'll move it to another file. I just need to add it and also grab the class names for it. So everything should be still working, and thank God it's still working. Nothing has changed. So now that I have in my instrument the price change working correctly, I'll move the same code here to header. So in my header, I'll also introduce this price change, this value change component, and I'll pass the value change in the props. Beautiful. And in my ticker, I'll do the exact same thing. I'll pass the price, the value change, and I'll pass the price change as the props ticker price change. Beautiful. So everything is working correctly, but we've made one mistake. We've missed one small thing. And the thing is that here on the design, the text is small. And here on the design, the text is a tiny bit bigger, similarly to here. So what we need to do is somehow allow in our component to, depending on what we want, display a small or large text. We can do it different ways. We can pass class names and so on. But what I'll do just to simplify it, I'll pass a variant. And variant, depending on if it's small or if it's medium, will display the correct text size. So when the variant is small, I want the text to be small, and when the variant is medium, I want the text to be medium, as said previously. I'll remove the, I've inputted also the small as the default value, and now in the instrument, it works perfectly. And in my ticker, I'll use the medium variant. Oh, so it's working correctly now. And in my header, I'll use the medium, and in my ticker, I'll also use the medium value. Perfect. So we're back on track with being good with the design. We've just had to introduce a variant, but everything works perfectly. Our app, we just did what we were supposed to do. But as always, this presentation would end with nothing at this point. No one learns anything. And that's exactly how it works also in our life. The problem comes here, and the solution to this problem that will come later, comes when we want to change something. We've just implemented a part of code, and our client just called, and he asked to add some functionalities. And there are two functionalities that the client wanted to add. I'm not going to implement it manually right now because it will take a lot of time, but our client just wanted two things to change. The first thing that our client wanted to change is the possibility to toggle between absolute and manual value, the absolute and percentage values. And what does this mean? So essentially, the client wants that if we click on this label here or here, that the price will price difference will change from percents to an absolute amount in dollars. So how do we approach this task? The first things first, we need to probably pass this price absolute change to our value change, because our backend is, thank God, working very quickly. So we already have this information about the price absolute change here. So the next part is just to use it and format the text. So we're going to pass price absolute change to our value change component. We're going to introduce a format type that will format type enum that we'll be using to differentiate between the two states. And we're gonna write some code to handle those two states. The first part of code is obviously, as I said previously, we need to hold the state in our component. So the first part is pretty trivial. We want some state using the useState React hook, and we want to by default be the percent value. The second thing that we want to implement is that whenever we click something, we want the format to toggle between one another. So I'll implement it. We're taking whenever we call the function set state, set format type, we're checking what's the current format, and if it's format type percent, then we want the format type absolute to be the new value. And if it's format type absolute, we want it to be the percent value. So we have the toggling. We can even call this function. So whenever we click this function, the format changes, the state changes, but nothing is shown yet, indicating that this state in fact changed. So what we need to do now is, depending on this state, render some kind of text. So when the format type is percent, again, we want to render format price change in percents that we previously had. And we'll take the price change here, the price change here to render it. And whenever the format type is not percents but absolute, we'll use the format price change in dollars function that we also have. And now nothing has changed because we're still not using this text. We'll use this text now. And as you can see, some of the values that we've introduced sometimes are not a number. But other than that, it's working perfectly. Why is it not a number? It's not a number because we forgot to pass those values to our components. So I'll pass the absolute values to our components here in the ticker. Same in the header. And same exact thing in the instrument. So, sorry. Beautiful. Everything is working. We can click. The value changes when we click it. We're using all of our new data. Very simple. Beautiful. But what happens next? Again, we still didn't learn anything, so you can expect that we're missing something. And we're missing the next step, the new changes to our implementation. While implementing all of this, because this application has been created by me, similar to this application has been created by me some time ago. I've worked with one of those projects. The next thing that changed was a slight change in the color. So this time, rather than previously having the color change here and the text being shown as white, we did it the other way around. And also, the client didn't want, because here we have a slider, the client didn't want by mistake to click on the changing of those values. Previously, in our tickers, we also changed to it to be an absolute change sometimes. And what this caused was that the value change component grew a lot. And by a lot, I mean we already required 3 props previously for handling the price change, absolute change, and the variant. Now we've introduced two more values to handle disallowing format change. So whenever I click it, I don't want it to change the format. And also to handle the text change. Now when I pass is blank, the text stays white. So no matter the price change, it works this way. But this introduces a problem for the future. Our abstraction is leaking a lot. We're drowning in props already. Whenever we use this value change, we're drowning in props. There's a lot of possibilities to render here something, and I was very scared that it will grow more. So how did this happen? And what can we do different about how we code that will make our code more resistant to this props bloat? And the answer to this solution is not that simple, and we have to move back and think about what is actually shown on the screen. So now you'll see that on the left, instead of the design, we're looking at a very, very simple version of what's on the screen. And on the left, you can see from the top, you can see that we have the user, the wallet value in dollars, the recent value change in percents in dollars, the instrument list with value changes in percents. And on the instruments list, we have instrument data on the left, I would say, and the value in dollars and value change in percents in dollars. So what is actually on the screen? Looking at what we're trying to display for the user rather than how it looks, we can definitely see that we are not just showing a random number formatted as dollars in both header and instrument. For example, it would not make sense to show the ID of instrument here and format it. There is no problem that instead of the value in the header, I'll pass a 1 to it, which could be the ID of the user, or a UUID, if it maybe not a UUID, but a random number generated. So we can pass values that I don't want to show there. And here we should be showing only the values which make sense to be formatted as dollars. But what we did with the value change, which is even a more complicated solution than the value itself, is we tried to build a component that has a very generic interface because it receives a number, a primitive number as the prop, and it assumes that this number can be formatted as a dollar, and also style it, which is another case. So let this sink in. Wherever we use value change or value, everyone needs to use it correctly, which is hard to scale and causes a lot of problems. So we can, for example, show the dollar value in any place of our application without it working correctly. So I'll need you to trust me for 1 second and let me show you how I've approached this problem and tried to fix it. So the first part is that we need to somehow encapsulate this data together. And how do we do that? we introduce what's called an object. And to introduce an object, we need to declare a class. So I'll introduce a value class, and this value class will obviously have a constructor. And in this constructor, I'll be receiving a value, so a public read-only amount. And instead of returning a number, I will be returning a formatted string. So here, instead of doing it as I did previously, I'm going to implement it in a way that my number is, I'm going to do it in a way that my number is working correctly. So I'll return the format price change, format value in dollars, and I'll show this amount here. Import the value, format value in dollars. And here in my account, rather than the value being a simple number, I'll have it be a value. And because this is of type I account, my app will be mad, my TypeScript will be mad that I'm passing a number here. So I'll wrap this number into a value. And as you can see at the top right now, I have not a number here instead of what I had previously. So in my header, instead of calling it this way, format value in dollars value, I'll call value formatted, the method that I just created. And we're back on track here. So I'll do the same thing right now for also not only the header, but also the instruments, so that now the header uses the value as it did previously, as we've just implemented. And I've also changed it in the instrument. So in the instrument, I've changed the number as it was previously to being value now. And the same way in my instrument, I've changed the symbol, the formatting to from running a function here to just being formatted here. And okay, again, and our value change is still not touched yet, so we need to move further to see how to fix it even better. And how do we come with a model for the value change? Because we did the value, now it's time for the value change. And we can do the exact same thing of introducing a value change class that will take something in the constructor, but what should a value change take in constructor? And again, we need to simplify our design even more and think about the data that is actually shown on the screen. If we look at the data that is actually shown on the screen, we can argue that the value change that we previously had here is, in fact, a difference between two values. It's between the current value and the previous value. And our value is already defined. Our data structure for value is already defined. So we can use and compose those objects together and use the abstractions that we already have for creating more complex abstractions. So I'll take the current value from that is a value, and I'll take the previous value that is also a value here. And now I have a value change. Again, our value change in our design, it can be formatted or shown in percents and dollars. So I'll define a formatted function. And this formatted function will work just as we had it working in our code. But this time, depending on the format type that is passed, because we want to ask this class to format things for us, we will format the price in percents if we're asking for the format type in percents. And we want to format the price in dollars if we're asking about it in dollars. But I've added two properties here as parameters because we don't have the raw amount here. And we can argue that we have it in our data from the backend that is passed to us, but we don't really need it. If you think about two values and showing the difference between them, what you actually want to show is a very simple subtraction from one to another. So I'll define a value absolute change, which is essentially current value amount minus previous value amount. And I'll also define a value percentage change. Percent change. That is the absolute change divided by the previous value amount. So now we have our value change ready, and we just have to use it. And to use it, we need to use it in all of those places where we have it, but we can start with the account. So here, instead of, again, number, we'll use the value change. Here, we'll wrap it up so that we'll have a new value change instead of the previous one. And we'll pass two values. We've had 1,000 as the current value, and the previous value is 950. So everything is working, but as you can see, here we have a blank thing because our value change implementation is not working correctly. So let's move this value change implementation to start working correctly. And because we're using the same component in three places, we have to make it a bit smarter than we have it than just trying to rewrite all at once. I'll try to create a header value change component, and which will be an exact copy of what we have here. I'll just rename it, and I'll use it in the header. So I'll import it here in the header. And right now, our price change changed from being a simple number to being something more complicated there. So we need to change the implementation to take this into account. I'll import the value change at the top, and here the price change, I will change the definition to be the new class that we defined. And what does this give us? This gives us quite a lot. First of all, we no longer need the text here because our price change, we can ask it for the formatted version. I see I didn't export my class. So we can ask for it to be formatted in a specific format. What format? Thank God we have the state held here with the format. So you cannot see it, but what's left to be done is to handle the price change coloring here. And I did that already. It's simplified a lot because what needs to be done is essentially we need to introduce something that will still encapsulate the logic of the value chain, just like we did with the formatted, but this time that indicates the sign that is right next to the price. This time it's positive. So I'll quickly add a public get is positive. It returns if this current value is greater than, if this value absolute change, if the change is greater than 0, it means that the change was positive. And if it was less than 0, then it means it was negative. I have a slight problem. Yes, we incorrectly used this component. It's value changed, not price. Okay, so in our header, we have everything working correctly right now. But in our header value change component, we've dropped a lot of stuff that we've been previously using. Because we already do it for the header, we can drop the styling because we've dropped the styling differences here. We can drop the is blank and disallow format change because we always show colors and we allow format changing here. And we can drop the price absolute change because we're no longer using it. So we're left with a component that has just one. So we're left with a component that has just one property, which is much easier to use. And we can do the same thing for the instrument, which I'll do right now. I'll copy this beautiful component of header value change. I'll call it instrument value change. And I'll change, because the instruments had the text as small, for now, I'll just change the text to be small. So, and in our instrument, rather than using the previous value change component, I'm going to be using the instrument value change component. Just need to import it, or I've even imported it already. I'll pass the value change. And the value change in our data for instruments is still incorrect because it's still a number. So I'll quickly jump to a place where it's no longer a number. I'll jump to a place where this one is already changed and it's a value change. Okay, so as you can see, now we have it defined as value change instrument. The instruments are working beautifully. Moreover, our numbers are correct right now, so we're not showing bollocks data for the mocked stuff that we currently have. And we're left with only the tickers not yet implemented. So I'm going to implement in the ticker the same idea that we had in our value changes previously. So we had the header, we had the instrument, and now I would implement the ticker. But when you think about it, the ticker never used a lot of the functionalities that were used here in the in this whole component. The only thing that it used was essentially the formatting. So in our ticker, rather than rendering this complicated value change, we'll just take the span that we had, copy it, and we no longer handle toggling format. We don't need any styling besides the font being bold and the text being medium. And the only thing that we need to do is just format the price change here. And again, in our tickers, we didn't yet have in our data, the price changes are not yet defined correctly. So I'll jump quickly to a place where they are. I'll just check out to it. And you can see that the value change in the tickers are also defined. And here, for the tickers, I didn't have a possibility to show a ticker to get an absolute change. So I've implemented a dummy static method that creates a class where the percent change is used in the constructor. Where I create a dummy value that is 100 plus the percent change. And on the right, we have just a new value of 100. Thanks to that, if I only have the percentage change and I need to define a value change, and I know it's going to be shown only in percents, then I can create a custom constructor and live with that. And then when using it in our ticker, I just did what I said. And what this gives us as a whole is we just got rid of our whole value change component. As you can see, the only thing we're left with is the header and the instrument value change. no longer we have this colossal component running. We only have those two small ones, which are very similar to each other. And now comes the point that is the most dangerous in this whole presentation. We've just implemented a lot of cool things that we've simplified a lot. And now the next step is what to do with it. And the answer might not be that simple, because the first thing that comes to mind is just go back to what we had, kind of. We introduce a value change component that will have a prop that is with the variant that handles the font size. But we're not going to do that. So there are three types of abstractions that I would call in a front-end application. The first one is a data abstraction. The second one is a functional abstraction. And the third one is a UI abstraction. And instead of going with the UI abstraction right here, we'll go with the functional one. And the functions in React are encapsulated, at least in the new React, using hooks. Though this is what hooks are for. So I'll quickly introduce a new hook that will handle this logic. So I'll go to my utils and I'll write down a hook for that. Because we're running low on time, I'll just jump into it and copy. And here you can see, similarly, what we had here, we in our current implementation, we had using state, where the format type percent was the first one, and toggling the format between two values means that if this first value is currently selected, then pick the second one, and the other way around. So I did just that. I've created a hook, use toggle between values, that takes two values and returns this. And now I'll just use this hook. So in my value change, I'll in this value change, rather than having the previous solution, I'll use toggle between values hook, where the first one is the percent and the second one is the absolute. Beautiful. And okay, everything's working. And I'll do the exact same thing, instrument value change. Okay, so now everything's working correctly still, yes, but we're still stuck with this very similar code here, here, and also here. And the question right now is, what do we do about this? Because we've simplified it the most that we could. And can we simplify it even more, or create a reusable component again? And the answer is probably I suggest against it. The solution for me, the best solution for me, because we're using those components in only one place each, the easiest solution is to just go there to the place where we use it in, copy our current implementation, and oh, sorry, not the instrument, the header. Copy the current implementation, import our lovely class names, and use the correct props, and have it working. And we can remove this one. And what do we do with the instrument value change? We do the exact same thing. We remove this code from here. We move it right here. We take the span and put it right here. Again, we'll copy the class names, just to be clear. And instead of the props value change, we'll use props price change, or the price change itself. And when doing this, we can get rid of this component. And because we got rid of this, we can get rid of this. And the only thing left in our value change is essentially the format type. So Is this the correct solution? I would say this is the simplest solution that is very resilient to changes in the design. We have to learn that if we have a client that is eager to change something in our design, then let's not build the basis of our abstractions using UI, but rather than that, use code to it. So what have we learned? That building generic UI components, or what I call UI abstractions, that can be reused across our application makes sense, but usually do not bring that much value unless we have a well-prepared design system that's concrete and doesn't change often that we're building on. Moreover, it can sometimes bring more harm than good. So care when building UI abstractions around things that you don't actually need. Don't be afraid to duplicate code there. On the other hand, we've seen that building well-defined reusable data structures and functional abstractions with a well-encapsulated logic in our system, even in framework like React, gives us a lot better understanding of what is in fact shown in our application. So it brings a lot more value on its own. So now whenever in the application we want to add a new functionality, we look at it, for example, another price change somewhere or a value change somewhere, we look at it as a change of prices, and we can use the specific data structure that we already have and reuse it there, reusing the same interfaces. Or at the top of the, by creating the idea of the price change structure, encapsulating not only data but also logic related to it, we drastically change the perception of how we look at the application as a whole. So now we not only think about a green-red box displaying a number formatted as percents, but green-red box displaying the change in price. Or maybe not a green-red box, but just the change in price. And this makes so much sense on both code and business level. It's so much easier to communicate with your client the problems that you have in code when you're talking about the data, or it's so much easier to communicate with the designers when you're talking about data and not about the component that you've created that is very hard to extend. So my answer to all of this is don't be so primitive. And I don't want to be offensive, build abstractions also around your data. Don't be afraid to not use React components for everything. I would say tend not to use React components for many of the stuff that you're working on, especially related to data. And thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Czy jest jakiś powód, czemu używamy enuma dla format type zamiast union absolute percent? Tutaj akurat można użyć obu. W jednym przykładzie użyłem uniona, w drugim dla wariantu użyłem uniona, w drugim przykładzie użyłem enuma. Raczej mam tendencję do trzymania się enumów, dlatego że nie przepadam za przekazywaniem pustych stringów. I też dużo łatwiej w razie czego później ekstendować te rzeczy i używać w wielu aplikacjach. Ciężko się transferuje takie rzeczy. Więc to tak, co z tym hackatonem? Gdzie się można zapisać? Mignęło tak szybko. Mogę wrócić na sekundkę do tego slajdu. To chyba był slajd nie ten. Nie ten. Ten slajd. Można się zapisać na lpaszyn.com/hack4music i zapraszam wszystkich do udziału. Będzie bardzo fajnie, obiecuję. Też tam będę pomagał ludziom budować aplikacje, więc jeżeli chcecie też popracować z ludźmi od nas i zobaczyć, jak budujemy, albo jesteście ciekawi, no to śmiało zapraszamy. w jaki sposób stworzyłbym instancję value i value change, jeśli dane przychodzą w API w postaci JSON-a. Tak, gdybym miał jeszcze 10 minut na tę prezentację, to bym spróbował to pokazać, ale niestety nie mamy aż tyle czasu. Z grubsza użyłbym do tego customowe konstruktory. Mogę tak na szybciutko spróbować pokazać, czyli w momencie, kiedy by value przyszło, załóżmy, z backendu i na backendzie mielibyśmy jakąś określoną formę tych danych. Załóżmy, że z backendu przyszedłby nam backend value, który by miał jakąś inną strukturę, załóżmy ABC, które by było numberem, albo stringiem, nie daj Boże, by przyszło nam, albo nie, niech zostanie numberem, ale wiemy, że to jest ABC amount i nie wiem, przyszłoby coś jeszcze, no to pewnie tutaj w value bym dodał metodę statyczną, która by przyjmowała from backend value, która by przyjmowała value I backend value, tak? I wtedy mógłbym tutaj zwrócić po prostu nowe value, gdzie załóżmy bym przekazał ten ABC amount, backend value w sensie. Backend value ABC amount, tak? Gdyby to był string, no to w tym miejscu bym jakby ogarnął to transformowanie danych z jednego miejsca w drugie. Czyli załóżmy, że zamiast tutaj bezpośrednio teraz mieć to account, dostałbym to z backendu, no to tutaj bym przemapował dane z jednych na drugie. I podobnie bym zrobił z value change. I dokładnie tak samo bym zrobił na przykład z listą instrumentów. Jeżeli byśmy mieli listę instrumentów i to też w nich już na etapie wchodzenia danych w aplikację, jak najwyżej, jak najszybciej transformowałbym dane z backendowych struktur na swoje struktury, których ja używam w aplikacji, bo to też jest enkapsulacja backendu, nieważne czy sami go piszemy, czy ktoś inny go pisze, jest bardzo istotna w momencie, kiedy nastawiamy się, szczególnie na wczesnych etapach developmentu. Myślę, że w ogóle na jakichkolwiek etapach developmentu, ale na wczesnych szczególnie. Nieraz miewałem sytuację, gdzie używałem najpierw jednego backendu do zaimplementowania czegoś, po czym nagle się okazywało, że trzeba było użyć innego, bo nie wiem, klient miał inne wymagania. Więc bardzo często zdarza się tak, że to trzeba, że tak powiem, zmieniać. Dobra. Jak radzisz sobie z przemapowaniem dużej ilości prymitywów? Koszt pamięci i procesora. Okazuje się, że mapowanie danych jest tanie. Ogólnie mało rzeczy nasz komputer robi dobrze, ale proste operacje matematyczne robi bardzo dobrze. Czyli takie na przykład odejmowanie albo dodawanie jest bardzo, bardzo proste dla naszych komputerów. I jeżeli chodzi o na przykład, miałem sytuację taką, że mapowałem dane z aplikacji, która wyświetlała wykresy i na tych wykresach były załóżmy 1500 punktów i backend zwracał mi 1500 punktów i okazało się, że to było doskonałe miejsce przy przemapowywaniu, żeby stwierdzić, w sumie jak będziemy wyświetlać w SVG 1500 nodów, to oberwie na tym nasza wydajność znacznie, więc może przy okazji tutaj nie tylko będziemy to mapować, ale też dodatkowo będziemy obcinać część i zaokrąglać część tych punktów. No i okazało się, że to był strzał w dziesiątkę, bo zazwyczaj jeżeli mamy na tyle dużo danych, że nie da się ich przemapować, to jeżeli chodzi o renderowanie w ogóle tych danych, to już jesteśmy tym bardziej w plecy. Więc nie przejmowałbym się tak samym mapowaniem, a bardziej tym, po co nam aż tyle danych w interfejsie użytkownika. Oczywiście w niektórych przypadkach to będzie niezbędne, bo mamy takie ekrany i wtedy po prostu trzeba te dane memoizować, czyli nie robić tego przy każdym renderze na przykład, mieć te dane zapisane gdzieś w jakimś stanie, który nie przerenderowywuje się na przykład na każdym callu do API. No, to tak. Albo jakieś diffy, czy coś takiego. Dobra, to odpowiedziane. Dlaczego siedzę w czapce w domu? Bo mi strasznie włosy i na pewno na widowni jest mój kolega Piotrek i Piotrek się nabija z tego, że mam strasznie długie włosy, więc, ale nie przez to, że mam długie włosy, tylko nie ogarnięte do końca, więc żeby wyglądać tak mniej w tych włosach tak szalenie, to mam czapkę w domu. Poza tym mieszkam na strychu i na strychu jest chłodno. W ogóle jestem w niebieskim pokoju. Tutaj niebieski pokój jest podczas prezentacji, do tego jestem przypisany, jest niebieski pokój, ja siedzę w nim. Dobra, to chyba tyle. Dobra, czy mamy jeszcze jakieś pytanka? Nie. No dobra, super. Dzięki wielkie za wszystko. Było bardzo miło. Przypominam jeszcze raz, zajrzyjcie na nasz buff, w sensie do naszej skrzynki wirtualnej i poznajcie nas. Jeżeli macie jeszcze jakieś dodatkowe pytania, ale nie wiem, nie chcieliście przy wszystkich spytać, też uderzajcie do mnie. I dziękuję bardzo. Dzięki. O. Dziękuję, panie Kapslu. Bardzo mi się podoba nick Kapsel. Dzięki. Kiedyś w grze miałem nick Kalosz. Też. Dzięki.